My name's Lauren. I'll just introduce myself quick. I'm a third-year medical student at WVU, and I will just give everyone a quick overview of what to expect over the next hour. So first, we're going to hear from Mia about the topic of the Mediterranean lifestyle. And then as we walk together virtually, she'll be able to answer questions about the topic. It's like I was saying, it's nice to see everyone walking in the cold, and it's really motivating. So I'd like to introduce everyone to Mia. So she's a second-year medical student at WVU School of Medicine. And she's always walking with us every week, but today she's actually going to be leading the conversation about the topic of the Mediterranean lifestyle. So I will let her take it away.
All right, thank you, Lauren. Yes, so everyone, my name is Mia Antinone, and I'm a second-year medical student at WVU. I grew up in Weirton, West Virginia, and a lot of my family is on the call today, so thanks, Aunt, Uncle, Mom, Dad, Grandmas, for joining today. I'm a member of the Culinary and Medicine Lifestyle Track, which is a unique area of emphasis you can have during your studies as a medical student at WVU. And a lot of what we try to focus on is healthy lifestyle changes for our patients. And one of the big kind of principles we use to help people in counseling them on lifestyle changes, wellness, and diet is based on the Mediterranean diet principles. And so if you've heard of the Mediterranean diet, it was in the news recently. So it was actually ranked this year by US World and News Report as the #1 best diet overall for 2020. It was ranked #1 in best plant-based diets, #1 in best heart-healthy diet, #1 in best diabetes diet, best diet for healthy eating, and the easiest diet to follow. And so you'll hear all these things in the news about this diet and that diet, and this one's really been popular for 2021 and as years in the past as well. And so I'm here to just give you kind of a general overview of what it is and what the big craze is about this Mediterranean lifestyle. And so the basis of the diet is all about the cuisine around the Mediterranean Sea. So people that live there have access to fresh seafood. They eat lots of fruits and vegetables. They're very active in walking around and getting physical activity just by daily living. They also like to enjoy meals with family. Sitting down and eating together is a big part of their life. And they occasionally indulge in some wine with meals. And so it's a lifestyle rather than a diet, which is what I want to try to emphasize today. It can really work with all different kinds of jobs, lives that you could live. And it's really kind of what you make of it, but it just goes by a couple of principles of trying to incorporate more fish into your diet, eating healthy fats. So those would be more of your unsaturated fats, which are your liquids at room temperature, to lower your LDL and try to help with your cholesterol. It involves eating fresh fruits and vegetables, less red meat, and really just enjoying mealtime for the food. So why is this a big thing? What's the deal with the Mediterranean diet, and where is the research coming from? So actually, it's all started kind of in the 1950s. And there was this man named Ansel Keys, and he was an American physiologist, and he was raised in Berkeley, California. And he started this study of 7 countries and wanted to compare them after World War II had ended. And his original purpose of the study was to see how heart attack prevalence in the US changed after World War II ended, because he saw that people were getting heart attacks earlier in life and also atherosclerosis. And he was like, I really don't think this is a part of normal aging. And other people in other countries of the world weren't getting these early heart attacks, or weren't getting all this cardiovascular disease really as much at all. And so he was like, there's something going on here. I want to try to figure it out. And so he analyzed 7 different countries and looked at their diet. So we started with Italy, Greece, Yugoslavia, Netherlands, Finland, Japan, and the US. And he found that heart attack rates were higher, 10 times higher, in countries of Finland and the US, where they ate a lot of saturated fats in their meals. But in Japan and the Mediterranean countries, people who ate lots of fruits and vegetables, rice and fish, heart attack rates were lower. So this was the first kind of big study that came out. But then there was another heart attack study, and other people kept following this up. And so there was a Lyon heart study where people who had already had their first heart attack, were put on a Mediterranean diet, and they'd look to see if they were put on the Mediterranean diet, are they more or less likely to have another heart attack again? And people that were put on a Mediterranean diet, they actually saw less recurrence in heart attacks over the next 4 years. And then one last study in Greece, they found a reduction in coronary artery disease and cancer by adhering to this diet. And so there's been a lot of research since the 1950s on this Mediterranean diet, what it is, and different places giving different guidelines on how to incorporate it into your lifestyle and for it to be good for your overall health. And so there are 9 components that I've written down for you guys today. And so we're going to go through each component of the Mediterranean diet, and I'm going to make you guys take this kind of as a quiz, okay? So a perfect score, being like you're perfectly on the Mediterranean diet, you get a 9. So there are 9 categories, and we'll go through each one, and I'll tell you whether or not you can get a point for yourself. So you can calculate your score. Okay, so the first category is vegetables. So if you eat 2 to 3 cups of vegetables per day, give yourself a point. So this would be your leafy greens, your carrots, your celery, your beets. Give yourself 1 point if you eat 2 to 3 cups a day. Okay, number 2 is legumes. So if you eat 2 to 3 servings per week, so this is per week, of peas, okra, lentils, chickpeas, or peanuts, or beans, then you can give yourself a point. So a serving size would be like a 1/2 cup of cooked beans, a 1/4 cup of peanuts, or peanut butter counts. A tablespoon of peanut butter can count. So if you're having a peanut butter and jelly sandwich 2 to 3 times a week, you can give yourself a point. Okay, the third is nuts and fruits. And you would need 1 to 3 servings per day to give yourself a point. So for this one though, we're talking all about fiber. So we're talking about fresh fruits. So if you eat an orange, if you eat an apple, strawberries, even dried fruit counts. But if you're drinking fruit juice, like orange juice, apple juice, unfortunately that does not count because we're looking for the fiber to come from the whole fruit. So 1 point if you get 1 to 3 servings a day of nuts and fruits. Number 4 is cereals and whole grains. So it has to be a whole grain. So if you eat 2 to 3 servings per day, you can get a point. So a serving would be like a slice of whole grain bread, a 1/4 cup of uncooked rice, oatmeal, quinoa, or polenta. Okay, so 2 to 3 servings a day of that. Okay, number 5. So this is a big one on the Mediterranean diet because they're close to, the people that live in the Mediterranean Sea are close to that sea, so they can eat seafood. And so if you eat 2 servings of seafood a week, you can give yourself a point. And each serving would be like about 4 ounces, but 2 servings a week, you can give yourself a point. Okay, number 6 is oils and fats. So you can give yourself a point if you're eating more unsaturated fats than saturated fats. So unsaturated fats would be those oils like olive oil, those things that are liquid at room temperature. So olive oil, vegetable oil, peanut oil, or even an avocado. And the saturated fats would be butter, hard margarines, and Crisco. So you need to be eating more unsaturated fats than saturated to get a point there. Okay, number 7 and number 8 are different because these are things that they don't really eat that much of on a Mediterranean lifestyle. So number 7 is dairy. So if you eat less than 7 ounces per day of dairy, you can give yourself a point. So if you drink less than a cup of milk, or eat less than a cup of yogurt, or less than a cup of cheese, You can give yourself a point, and that's per day. And number 8 is meat. So if you eat less than 4 ounces a day of meat, you can give yourself a point. So 4 ounces is about the size of a deck of cards. And the last one, number 9, is alcohol. So on the Mediterranean diet, it's about 2 drinks a day for men or 1 drink a day for women. So that's every day. So you can give yourself a point for that. And just to give you an idea of alcohol distribution, so that would 1 drink would be 12 ounces of regular beer, 5 ounces of wine, or 1.5 ounces of liquor. Okay, so that was all the categories. Everyone got their score? Are we surprised? Are we not surprised? So that ran through like 9 different principles. But again, the Mediterranean diet is more of a lifestyle. So it doesn't say you can't eat this or you can't eat that. It's just kind of a way to kind of plan your meals, plan them more around fish, more around good healthy fats, and more around produce and fresh fruits and vegetables. And so it really focuses on the quality of the food, foods that are high in fiber, that eat a lot less meat, as you saw from the score. But it still can stay high in protein if you eat a lot of those beans and nuts. And it's high in fats, especially those omega-3 fats from the olive oil and the fish. And so if you're looking at your score today and you're like, man, I really think that I can improve in some of these categories, the little things that I could do, then that's awesome. So here's my challenge to everybody. Think about your score today and think, how can I improve my score by 1 point next week? Okay, so here's some little ideas that I thought of. So maybe you are having pasta for dinner. And so making that pasta, and you can add some spinach to that pasta. Throw it in. You might not even realize that it's there. Or you're having a sandwich. You could throw some spinach on your sandwich. Or you could add more whole grains to your diets, especially things like oats and oat flour. So you're using now maybe whole grain pasta or doing whole grain bread. That could improve your whole grain score. Or you maybe are I think the most ambitious one is trying to incorporate more fish into your life, but you go to the grocery store and you're like, oh no, fish is really expensive. Well, when you think about it, there's canned tuna and there's canned salmon. And those kind of fish, they're actually really great sources of good fats. So you could go and buy those, and those are a little more affordable than some of the fresh fish options. And I have a really good salmon cake, tuna cake recipe that I'd be happy to share with everybody if that's something you'd like to try this week. So I think the big things about the Mediterranean diet is like, yes, it's been proven to improve like cardiovascular disease and your health, but it also is like great foods to eat. Kathy was talking before this, and she said or maybe Dr. Haggerty spoke for her, but they just like the idea, like the foods that are on the Mediterranean diet, the fish, and then the lifestyle is great too. It's all about like eating with people, enjoying a meal, enjoying wine or a glass of alcohol if you'd like one, but you definitely don't have to. I feel like that's the one score that you don't have to improve upon. If you don't drink already, then don't start to get that point. But if you like wine or like to have a drink every once in a while, then go for it. And so some takeaways from today, I think that, remember, it's just a lifestyle, it's not a diet, and there are other things that can help you to improve your life. So getting out, being active, mindfulness, having a good work-life balance, and this diet just focuses on the quality of food. I think the simplest thing to do if you're trying to stick to the Mediterranean diet is when you go to the grocery store, try to shop around the perimeter of the grocery store. So you walk in, you start with the fruits and vegetables, then you go past some of the breads and you pick the whole grains, then you get to the fish and seafood. And so try to avoid a lot of the processed foods that are in the center of the store. And when you look at your plate, it should be colorful. You should be eating the rainbow and fill your plates up with lots and lots of colorful things. So that's a little bit I have on the Mediterranean diet. I have some physicians on the phone too. If anybody wants to start a conversation, ask questions, you're welcome to do that in the chat or speak out loud, and we can just talk a little bit more about this Mediterranean lifestyle. So thanks everyone for listening to my talk today.
Hey, Mia.
Hey.
When I'm talking with patients about this, asking people to eat fat is sometimes against what they've heard, from media and their healthcare provider and stuff their
Yeah.
entire life. Can you maybe go through a little bit more of the sources of the healthy fat? Because I know the ones I give, but I bet you know a more exhaustive list than what I give people.
Okay, so maybe Kathy can also help me out with this, but the healthy fats would be more of your unsaturated fats, which would be your fats that are liquid at room temperature. So this would be things like olive oil, vegetable oil, and then like avocados also count as unsaturated fat. So we're like trying to avoid the things like butter and margarine, and especially I think it's like trans-saturated fats that we're really trying to avoid. But maybe Kathy can help me with that a little bit more. And then the fatty fish also comes from, or fats also can come from fish. So we're looking for omega-3s to come out of things.
Yeah, so in addition to those liquid oils, like you said, Mia, there's avocado. It's a great heart healthy fat, which also comes in oil form you can buy now. And also just like olives and nuts.
Yeah.
Walnuts are high in omega-3 fatty acids. The fatty acids that you're finding in fish, like you said. So it's not just about like the oil we add to our pan, but even like oil and vinegar salad dressing, all that kind of stuff. But it's also in some of our foods that are enjoyable to eat. So it makes it easier to get them in when you're like, oh, I can eat walnuts. Great.
So this is Dr. Lorenzetti. One thing I tell patients is to try to get in one serving of nuts or seeds every day.
Mhm.
So if you're making pudding, like chia seed pudding, you can throw chia seeds into a lot of things and they don't really add much flavor because they take on the flavor of whatever you're cooking or making. I throw them oftentimes into a pumpkin dessert that I make without any crust. It helps to actually keep things together, and it's another way to good way to add those omega-3s. The other thought I had as Mia was talking is most of the dairy in the Mediterranean diet tends to be fermented dairy. So the yogurts and cheeses, as she said, rather than a glass of milk. Because then you get all the benefits of fermentation and healthy bacteria. And that's what they were able to keep for a while rather than the fresh milk. So that's one of the thoughts. And then give examples to your patients how throwing in a little walnuts or almonds or pecans on top of some yogurt would, kind of round out the choices.
One
Yeah,
other thing that's, sorry, go ahead,
No,
Mia.
go ahead, Dr. Felix.
I was just going to say, one of the other things that's covered in our culinary medicine training is the type of unsaturated fats. So you want to have a higher proportion of omega-3 to omega-6 because omega-6 is a little bit pro-inflammatory. And the omega-6 fatty acids tend to be found in the more highly refined oils like vegetable oil, things that wouldn't normally produce an oil. So fried foods are not going to really fit into the Mediterranean diet as much because those are going to be a lot higher in the pro-inflammatory omega-6 fatty acids. So sticking with the things that do naturally produce oils like olive, like avocado, is going to be a better option, and nuts and seeds.
Mia, we have a question in the chat.
Okay.
It's asking if you know if red wine or white wine is better for health overall.
So I believe, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, that I think that there were benefits from red wine and having more like, maybe it was like antioxidants, but I could be wrong about reading something about that. Um, and
No,
then I
you're
was also, am I right?
yeah, you're correct. The red wines have the resveratrol. It's the color of the grape. So you are right about that.
Okay, and I was also reading about that that category, like number 9, and I was reading from physicians, and it was just saying like that's the one category that they really don't encourage their patients to try to improve their score on. If you don't drink, don't start drinking. Like you don't have to. But also like the the Mediterranean lifestyle is a lot about like sitting down and enjoying a meal with family and friends, and like having a glass of wine just to like enjoy the meal rather than like
So
well just
Mia,
yeah, for the enjoyment, right?
right. And one idea that I tell people is if they don't feel comfortable drinking the wine, since we know it is the red pigment of the red grape that has the resveratrol in it, then try to focus perhaps on eating some red cabbage or red onions. Um, Maybe the skin of an eggplant. Don't shave it off. Eat your grapes. Try every day to have a deeply beets, something deeply red or purple on your plate, just to get the benefits of that deep red pigment, because every pigment in fruits and vegetables gives different benefits. And so the red purple ones can give you some of those same benefits that that red wine could give.
Yeah, and that goes along with what I was saying earlier about like eating the rainbow, like filling your plate up with like all kinds of colorful things. And there aren't that many things that I can think of that I would eat that are purple, but you gave a lot of really good examples. And that can definitely make your plate a lot more colorful. So thanks for that.
We have another question in the chat. It's asking, can you compare butter and margarine?
Oh, okay. That has to do with the transaturated fats. And that's what margarine and Crisco are more full of the transaturated fats, which have really been, I think, more inflammatory for your health than butter. So if we could rank them, maybe we would put margarine below butter, below your like more olive oil.
That's
But
exactly what I would do, Mia. That's
okay,
perfect.
but I
Because
think
because the omega-6s in margarine, vegetable margarine, are worse for you than the natural fats that would be in butter.
And actually, just to kind of comment on that too, the FDA has banned trans fats. You guys still hear me? I'm losing battery out here.
Yeah.
yeah, I can hear
Yeah,
you.
we can hear you.
Okay. The FDA has banned trans fats. So they are being removed from the food supply. So this happened, I want to say a year or two ago. So they're working whatever is left in the food supply out. So what you're seeing now is that companies who normally make margarines and other snacks and things that have had trans fats in them before are now substituting things like tropical oils. So now you're going to be having the saturated oils in those products, so it makes it a saturated fat rather than the trans fat. So now you'll see butter and margarine, margarines made with things like palm oil and palm kernel oil, which are saturated fat. So now it's kind of like, okay, 6 1 half dozen the other. I've got fully hydrogenated, things, and I've got, these tropical oils and everything. So steering people more towards those unsaturated oils like olive oil is definitely a better thing. And I've actually been recommending, if people really, really love butter, they got to have it. They make blends now. So now you can get a butter blended with olive oil, Land O'Lake makes, or Olivio, which is made with olive oil rather than other types of oils. So there's an expanding product line, which is nice. And we're kind of filtering those trans fats out, which is also a good thing.
So along that line too is there was a recent study that showed that the fats in whole fat dairy are not necessarily bad for us and actually conferred some reduced risk of stroke. So again, if they really want butter, not that they should have tons of it or stick 2 tablespoons in their coffee, but if a little bit of butter on a vegetable, I would prefer that to any margarine.
Is there anything to do with like the Kerrygold? A lot of people are, on blogs and stuff, push the, the Kerrygold Irish butter.
I think it's because they're pushing it because it's made from grass-fed cows, from what I
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah, so higher in nutrients is what they're
Right.
saying.
Is it?
That's
Well,
what
they
they're saying.
say
That's
that
what the claim is because of the grass fed.
Right. And whether that's a big deal or not is probably remains to be seen. I don't think it's gonna, when people are, when I think about those questions, I think, okay, you're drinking a 6-pack of soda a day. Let's talk about that first, right? Instead of spending money on Kerrygold. I don't know.
Yeah, the other thing I see, the other
Yeah,
claim I see with grass-fed beef is that there's a higher omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acid ratio. That's the other claim. So that might be the other reason that Kerrygold's being promoted.
Well, I have looked into that, and that apparently is true. I read articles about the higher the more the animal is eating omega-3s in their diet, then their beef is going to be a healthier beef.
Yes.
So we had that at Journal Club one time. We talked through that article.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, just think, whatever, if we're going to eat something else, we're also eating what they're eating. So, when you think about it, it makes sense.
Very true. The other thing I wanted to mention with butter and cooking and people who like the flavor of butter, what you can do is you can use oil to do most of the cooking, then finish it off with a small amount of butter. That way you're getting less of the saturated fat, but you're still getting that flavor. And because it's hitting the dish right at the end, you're going to get all the flavor. I see that that technique used by chefs all the time, especially in sauces, because it adds a nice sheen and texture.
That's a good idea, Melody.
Yes, it's a different mouthfeel altogether, for sure.
We didn't mention coconut oil, and that is still on my debate list. I've tried to do a lot of reading about it, but I feel like it's still kind of inconclusive. Some say the medium chain triglycerides are used immediately by the brain, so they're not so bad, but I'm not real clear on how I feel on that. If you guys have any other opinion, that'd be good to hear.
It's so pushed in the health blog world right now.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, they're slathering it on their skin, they're eating it. I mean, it's such a big part of that world right now.
I think part of it is that it's a vegan saturated fat. It's stable at room temperature, so it's something that you can substitute for solid dairy fat and not have the same sort of issues that you might have with liquid fat. It'll keep the same texture because it's a solid fat.
Yeah, I think where the line is crossed is when they're promoting it for everything because it's going to cure this or that and the other. And I know as far as dietitians are going, we're still the jury's still out. So I encourage people to use it in recipes that call for it. Like if it's an Asian recipe that calls for coconut oil or something like that, that's totally fine. But if you're slathering it on anything and everything all day, that's not the direction we want to go in, for sure.
Right, and it's also a decent substitute for people who have lactose intolerance or dairy allergies. When my daughter was diagnosed with her dairy allergies, when I really got familiar with coconut oil.
Right.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Mia, we have another question in the chat, and it's asking if you could rank the plant butters.
So from what Kathy said earlier, she said if it doesn't normally make an oil, then that's a little different. So maybe Kathy could take that away because a lot of plants don't make oil. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
So are you asking about the plant-based spreads that are out? Is that what
I think that's what it is.
Okay. gosh, there's so many of them now, and that's not something I generally gravitate towards, but I've been having people who have asked about them, and I just really encourage people to read the ingredient list to find out what's in them, because they all have different bases, or they all have different claims on them, and there's a whole variety of them. So anything that's going to have more of those heart healthy fats in them, obviously tub butter is going to be less saturated, or tub spread is going to be less saturated as well. So, because they incorporate a lot more water in those products. But that's what I would really look at, is just kind of like where is the base ingredient coming from? Because there's soy spread, there's coconut spread, there's so many of them out there that it's really hard to kind of rank them next to each other without having them in front of you.
How would you rank things like olive oil versus avocado oil then, not necessarily the spreads?
When it comes to those particular oils, I kind of come at that from not only a nutritional standpoint, but a culinary standpoint. What's the smoking point of some of those things? And you'll find that there's a different, if you're cooking with it, there's different smoking points to different oils like avocado and olive oil, and even different between like extra virgin, regular, light, whatever. So nutritionally, I would say they're pretty equivalent. They're both very healthy monounsaturated fats, mostly. So I would just kind of grade those in particular as to what you're using them for sure.
One thing I tell people, of all of the other plant oils, canola has the best ratio of 3s to 6s. So, and it has a higher smoke point than olive oil. So maybe if you're going to stir fry something, use canola oil for that. And then save your olive oil for drizzling on your vegetables or your salad.
And just a fun fact, canola is actually a seed-based oil. It comes from the rapeseed plant. So it's rapeseed, but obviously they're not going to call it rapeseed oil because of the name. So because it was originally processed in Canada, that's how it became canola.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
So when you're counseling a patient on this, I think when they first hear about it, it might sound a little expensive compared to quicker fast food options that are, less healthy. Do you have any suggestions of how you would counsel a patient in that regard?
Yeah, so I was actually, one of the studies that I was reading about, it was the one where I think it was Lyon one, where the people had a heart attack and then they were told to follow the Mediterranean diet, and they followed up with them afterwards, and they actually said that the people that started the diet actually really, really liked it, but it was kind of hard for them to get started and get used to this kind of food. And a lot of the foods that we're talking about, they definitely require a lot more time and attention to cook. Especially I think fish, that might be something that somebody has to learn how to cook if they've never cooked it before. One of my favorite recipes that the culinary track has given to me was the tuna cakes recipe, which we actually started, we did it with a group from the food pantry. We were trying to do recipes that you could pull the ingredients out of your cabinet, or people collected them from the food pantry in a bag, and then we cooked together. And I love that recipe. And honestly, I changed it up to do salmon cakes using canned salmon. And then for Christmas, we did crab cakes, but I used the same recipe and it was awesome. So I think cheaper options like canned things like canned salmon, canned tuna are easy and more affordable ways. But yeah, Meg, you're right. The time thing for people that don't cook often, this Mediterranean diet is a lot focused on cutting out a lot of your processed foods. So it really isn't a convenient thing, but little snacks like having carrots or nuts instead of a bag of chips with you all the time, or eating more when you have a salad, putting more olive oil based things rather than a creamy ranch or a creamy blue cheese. They're just little things that you can do to improve your Mediterranean diet score. And if anybody else has any more ideas, I think that was a really great question, Mag. I threw out a few, but welcome to hear from other people.
I know that Dollar General sells a lot of dollar packages of frozen fruits and vegetables. So those people that say they can't afford fresh, or that they buy something and it goes bad, the dollar store has really pitched in with their frozen section.
Not to mention frozen vegetables available at regular grocery stores. I know Kroger regularly does 10 for $10 deals on their steamer bags of frozen vegetables.
Other thing to think about, and I think Mia, you hit on it, if you eat carrots versus the bag of chips, I think that the cost of a bag of carrots, you're probably getting more than what you get in a bag of chips. But the other side of that is you sometimes eat less because you're getting that fiber and filling up more. So sometimes I think looking at it from that direction with a patient can be helpful. And then the other thing that I've been pushing is your category about fruits. We underutilize fruits. They're like the perfect convenience food in our society. Like an apple or a banana or, things like that don't always take prep. You can just grab them and go. So those are some of the ways that I think of increasing those without the cost as much.
I will say if I have patients who, they'll say, fresh fruit or, fresh foods are so expensive. I can't really afford to buy fresh fruits and vegetables. I definitely steer them towards frozen and canned because both of those things are processed minimally, and they are minimally processed at the peak of their ripeness. So we know that they're going to be a good quality. I encourage, obviously, things with no added salt, no added sugars. But those are really great options for folks who need things that don't go bad or things that are much cheaper than what you can buy fresh, especially this time of year.
I had one family that had to feed 6 kids with 1 pound of hamburger. And so we suggested stretching the hamburger with either oatmeal or lentils, which are cheaper options. So when you're making like a meatloaf or stuffed peppers or chili, you can get away with stretching that meat a little bit with the lentils that don't add that much different flavor. Neither does the oatmeal.
Diced mushrooms can help in the same way. And canned mushrooms are pretty cheap.
Yeah, those
I
are all
do
great ideas.
celery. I do celery and meat a lot. My kids know that, but it just picks up the flavor of whatever I'm cooking. So I have a sloppy Joe recipe that I put tons of celery in, but adding onions and peppers and celery, you can really increase the amount.
Dr.
I feel
Lorenz,
like I preach that every day, Tria. I'm like, put vegetables in it and it'll stretch it out and make it less calories per
I
serving.
think that's something we miss in pasta too. I mean, when we're talking cost, of course, I think a pasta alone is cheaper maybe than doing this, but we miss adding vegetables into pasta in the American diet. You can really increase your vegetable intake with a really good pasta dish, and it's so much better than just the pasta alone in my eyes. But
especially if you're making your own sauce.
yes. Yeah, I wish I had spent my life doing that, but I didn't. So it's frustrating.
So at the beginning of COVID, I don't know how many of you made a little pantry, but I filled my pantry with cans of fire roasted tomatoes and chicken in cans, and then some broth starters. So I figured if anything, you could have chicken soup if I can't go to the grocery store. And that canned chicken we use a lot at the pantry because if you brown it a little bit before you stick it in something, it tastes pretty good.
Mia, I have another question for you. So I know you've studied, I know you've been, looking at this diet a lot. Was there anything in your research that really surprised you about the Mediterranean diet?
Oh, that's a good question.
So Actually, yes. And I've been thinking about this like overnight. There's nothing in the Mediterranean diet about sugar, which I think is a huge part of our diet. Like there's all different kinds of sugars that we're getting, and the Mediterranean diet doesn't talk too much about sugar. So I was like really surprised by that. It's like a lot about fats, and a lot about fiber, but there's not much about like guidance on sugar. Um, but I also think with the Mediterranean diet, like with the Mediterranean thing, it's a lifestyle. And so it's, you can have a cookie like I think you can have a cookie every once in a while. Like it's a lot about enjoying the lifestyle, enjoying the life, enjoying meals, enjoying food. And so it didn't focus on sugar, but I think that it focused on a lot of other really healthy foods.
Mia, I liked how you added the lifestyle components, because the Mediterranean diet is supposed to be done in the midst of all that other lifestyle stuff, like eating with your family and eating more slowly, because so many of us eat on the run. And if you guys Google blue zones, you can read
Yes, I was
so
going
much.
to talk about that. I have a little thing
Yeah,
on that. Okay,
good,
so
perfect.
Ansel Keys, who was a guy who originally started the study in 1950s, he actually lived to be over 100. And so I thought that was so interesting. And then if you look up what a blue zone is, it's these different areas of the world where people have really like prolonged lives. And so they looked at their lives, and there's 4 components to their lives that these communities have these principles of, that have, they think, contribute to their longevity. And so the 4 components to their good life was movement. So they do a lot of walking around their neighborhoods. They don't drive their cars that often. They walk from neighbor house to the grocery store. And if they can't move too much because they're getting older, they do a lot of cooking and cleaning around the house. A lot of them do a lot of gardening. And so that brings in the healthy food and healthy choices, because they're growing their own fruits and vegetables in their backyards. So that's the first component, was movement. Second was social support. They have really good communities, really close neighbors. And a lot of times their houses are very close to each other. So they're like always interacting with other people. They make healthy choices. So a lot of the people in these communities have a plant-based diet more than a meat-based diet, which is a little bit of a focus of the Mediterranean. And they have really good outlooks on life. So they focus a lot on their purpose and have focused a lot on developing a good perspective. And so a lot of them are faith-based communities, or like some have some sort of spiritual component to them. And so there are the blue zones in the world right now. There's one in Japan, there's one in Costa Rica, there's one in Greece, and then there's actually one in Loma Linda, California, which is a group of Seventh-day Adventists. And there's one more in Sardinia, Italy. And if you want to learn a little bit more about this one, there's a Netflix special with Zac Efron. He does this this series called Down to Earth, and it's about Sardinia, Italy. And that in that area, there are 10 times more people over the age of 100 than in the USA. And he goes into the people's homes and he interviews them, and he talks about what they eat and what they do and how they live their lives. And it's one of my favorite episodes. I'm also Italian, so I like it because of that too. But I think it's a really cool episode. It was like 40 minutes. But if you're interested in learning more about these blue zones, you could watch that. And he does a lot of like really good educating, talking to researchers, and then just talking to the people of the town who live a really unique lifestyle, way different than we live here. So that's a little bit on the blue zones. So
Good
thanks for bringing
job.
that up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good job.
thanks. All right, do we have any more questions today, or should I just wrap it up and everyone can go back and get warm?
Thanks so much for talking about this, Mia. I think it's really important information to get out. And I love the lifestyle piece. It's something that I really try to focus on too. And I think, gosh, we just need to slow down and like get together and just really enjoy things about good nutrition and exercise and community.
Yes, and I'm really missing the like getting together part of meals right
Yes,
now. Like I
correct.
I am anxiously awaiting for COVID to go away so I can sit down and enjoy a meal with my family and just laugh and go out to eat when we can. But thank you all so much for joining me today. And thank you to the physicians that joined me and Kathy also for giving some good insight from your nutritional standpoint. If you're thinking about like improving your score this week, my challenge was to improve your score by 1 point. So we hope we gave you a lot of ideas this week on how to do it. So thanks so much everyone for listening today. I hope that you got something out of it. And if you feel like there's somebody else who might benefit from the conversation today, we'll be posting this audio recording on our YouTube channel, which is WVU Walk with the Future Doc. Our next walk will be in 2 weeks and Kathy will be speaking with us. Topic is to be determined, but we'll make sure it's fun and exciting.
I was gonna say, what am I talking about?
I don't know. We'll have to figure it out.
Okay.
But thanks so much, everyone. If you wouldn't mind typing your name in the chat, letting us know where you are, who you are, and where you're walking from, we would love that. So we can just see how far our program is reaching. But thanks so much, everyone. Have a wonderful Saturday and stay warm.